Hello, and welcome to the October edition of Export Exchange, Usdec's video series designed to help keep you up to speed on global dairy markets. I'm Stephen Kane, and I'll be joined shortly by my colleague, William Laux. I'd like to start today with a snapshot of where U.S. dairy markets are. For today, I'll focus on our main export products, cheese, skim milk powder, and whey. Let's start with cheese. Last month, we discussed the fundamentals painting a picture of a pretty tight cheese market. Domestic cheese demand saw a drop of 1.4% in August, the latest month available at the time of recording. However, cheese production was down even more with a 2.1% reduction from this time last year, suggesting continued tightness in the market. This has contributed to the continued 4-month-long drawdown in stocks from the 2020 high in April. Despite the tighter market, exports in August totaled around 31,000 metric tons, up 17% from this time last year, with cumulative exports to date running slightly above last year at just over 250,000 metric tons. 2 points that will have an impact on the market are the recently announced extension of the government food box program and the imminent opening of a large cheese plant in Michigan. Inclusion of cheese in the food box program will continue to contribute to tightness in the market. However, the opening of the large cheese plant in Michigan, once online, will overall help ease some of that tightness. Moving over to skim milk powder, U.S. non-fat dry milk skim milk powder exports in August softened slightly from July, but were up nearly 25% from this time last year. Cumulative 2020 exports to date are running well above 2019 levels at nearly 580,000 metric tons, driven by strong international demand. Following the historic run-up and drawdown of stocks we witnessed earlier this year, stocks are more or less in line with 2019 levels at 127,000 metric tons in August, firming U.S. non-fat dry milk prices. And lastly, domestic dry whey demand in August was down 35% from this time last year, while production has remained relatively consistent with prior years. International demand, however, has been growing, mostly out of China, which has helped contribute to increased global trade and help support a more recent rally in price over the past few months. Global whey product trade in 2020 is up 15% to date over 2019, and U.S. exports this year have been higher than in recent years, with August reaching the highest monthly export volume this year at over 21,000 metric tons, which is up over 50% from this time last year. That is a snapshot of our major export products, and I'll pass it over to William to go into more detail on our U.S. milk production.
Thanks for that overview, Stephen. Al and I are glad to have you join the team. As Stephen mentioned, I wanted to focus our deep dive this week on U.S. milk production, because it's obviously one of the main factors that's going to drive dairy markets moving forward. Over the past several months, we've seen steady growth in U.S. milk production, and that hasn't really been too much of a surprise. Through September, milk production is up 1.5% adjusted for leap day. That's quite the growth and represents an additional 2.5 billion pounds of milk this year, or 1.1 million metric tons, and that's a lot of milk. But the market demand has been strong enough to support that growth, both here in the United States, as evidenced by the U.S. cheese price, and internationally, as U.S. exports on a milk equivalent basis are up 16% over that time frame. But what's happening today is that U.S. milk production seems to be accelerating. September milk production grew by 2.3%. That was the fastest month since COVID hit, and the second fastest expansion since January 2017. So what's driving this? Well, for one, there aren't really any parts of the country that are contracting significantly. Dairy is in demand. And this map here shows that the major dairy producing states and the change in milk production over the past 12 months. And you can see that there are a lot of states growing, some by small amounts, but there are numerous states growing by really large figures. Texas, by itself, grew by nearly 500,000 metric tons, and Idaho and California weren't that far behind. Each grew by about 250,000 metric tons. And indeed, several other states, Colorado, Kansas, South Dakota, Michigan, and New York, all saw substantial volume growth. And on the flip side, very few states contracted. Wisconsin did, but by about the same amount as Michigan grew, so that cancels out. And there were several small contractions in the Southwest, but overall the picture is decidedly positive in terms of milk production. But if we go back to the more macro level, the biggest driver is that US farmers are very good at what they do, and so milk production per cow is growing steadily almost every single month, and that's what happened again in September. And really, we should expect this to continue for the foreseeable future unless there's a rapid demand shock that necessitates programs to disincentivize excess production like there was in April when COVID first hit the United States. But assuming that milk per cow will continue to increase each season, the other big driver is going to be cow numbers. And here we see US farmers overall are slowly adding cows the past several months. US farmers added an additional 5,000 head in September, and milk prices are good. So by all indications, driven by good demand, we should expect more milk inbound. So what does this mean for your business? Well, number one, it makes clear that there's going to be sufficient milk out of the United States to meet growing demand, both US and international. And number two, this rapid expansion of production is going to be more bearish on price if demand doesn't continue to grow at the pace it's on. International demand has proven remarkably resilient in spite of COVID-19, as global dairy trade's risen by 9.5% from April through August. Now, I suspect some of that is a desire to build higher just-in-case inventories, but that's a remarkable pace regardless. With more milk coming online, demand's going to need to continue to keep up its strength for markets to remain in balance into 2021. So that's one thing to keep an eye on. But that's it for this month's episode of Export Exchange. Feel free to reach out to Stephen or I with any comments or questions, and look forward to talking to you next time. Thank you, everyone.